A Fox News alert this morning happening right now, a live look at Parliament where we are waiting on the British Prime Minister to speak in the wake of the deadly terror attack in London. Raids are happening across the UK as we speak to track down any leads. 8 arrests just made in Birmingham overnight.
Birmingham is where the suspect reportedly rented the Hyundai before using it to mow down people on the bridge on his trek toward Parliament. 3 people were killed, 29 others hurt.
And we basically almost saw the whole thing play out on tape. The terrorist also stabbing an officer to death before being killed by another officer. The one who killed him had the gun. The other one who died didn't. Police saying the attack inspired by radical Islamic terror. Investigators not identifying the subject at this point, but they say they know who he is. Joining us now is Dan Bongino, former Secret Service agent and police officer, host of Renegade Republican, and ran for Congress in Montgomery County, Maryland. We could talk about that, but let's talk about, sadly, terror again. So again, it must horrify you to be on the street, Dan, and to have to do your job without a gun. Is that what you were thinking when you find out this officer gets stabbed to death? He was basically a victim.
Yeah, I mean, Brian, these savages who are intent on these soft target terror attacks, they only understand one language, and that's force. I mean, you're not going to talk them down. You're not going to pleasantly ask them to put the weapon down. They only understand force, and if you don't have the means to overcome their force with a greater sense of force vis-a-vis a firearm, then yeah, you're in a lot of trouble. And this heroic officer, died tragically. We see the results of that.
Sure. Dan, they've made 8 arrests so far in London and Birmingham. They've described him as a lone wolf, but it's rare that lone wolves don't have any connection. Yeah, Steve, I'm so glad you brought up this. I hate that term, lone wolf, so much. They are not lone wolves. This is the new strategy. It is a pack of lone wolves set out across the world to inflict terror upon people. They're not lone wolves. We have an assimilation problem right now. It's pretty clear that this worldwide PC effort for multiculturalism has failed. What we've done is we've created these cultural silos in individual communities which have made it easier for people to be radicalized. They feel isolated from other communities within the larger community. They're not lone wolves. This is the strategy for ISIS, to go and target people through internet propaganda, radicalize them, and set them loose for these little soft target terror attacks that don't leave a lot of investigative footprints. The lone wolf term is gone. I'm glad you brought that up.
Right. Well, Dan, a lot of people are saying, how do you prevent this? Because this is a guy in a car. People are just walking on the street. Yeah. But if he's not a lone wolf and he is working with other people, which he has to be, because you gave your argument. Also, this is a year to the day since the Brussels airport attack. So it seems it's more of a coincidence than for them to plan this on the anniversary of that. Can we intercept their phone conversations? Can we find out what they're going to do based on their email reports? How do you find guys like this before it happens?
Yeah, this is going to require an entire reworking of how we work federal law enforcement. I was a local law enforcement officer and a Fed with the Secret Service, and we have to focus on being, the best analogy is, we have to be arsonists. We can't be firemen anymore. We have to stop putting out these fires after the fact. The only way to stop a guy with a knife in a rented Hyundai is to get the intelligence in advance. But as you've seen in places like New York City, things that have been reported on this network, where they're stopping police officers in the NYPD from going into mosques.
Right.
Well, why? I mean, a mosque is a public place. Go in there and gather intelligence like you would anywhere else if there's intelligence to be gathered. You can't put limits on our cops and expect them to stop things like this.
So they have this Muslim mayor in London, and when they dropped the bombs here on 23rd and I think 29th Street, and they found this guy ultimately in New Jersey, and he's in jail right now, the Sadiq Khan, who's the mayor of London, said this about big cities.
Part and parcel of living in a great global city is you've got to be prepared for these things. You've got to be vigilant. You've got to support the police doing an incredibly hard job. You've got to support the security services.
Part and parcels of living in the city, we should expect IEDs?
Brian, that's insane. I mean, think about what he just said. Do you remember prior to 1970, these outbursts of Islamist soft target terror attacks happening weekly in major cities? Listen, there's always been terrorism throughout time, but there's no question that there's been a spike in these events associated with radicalized Islamists. This is insane. This is not part and parcel to anything. There's clearly a problem going on here with, again, this obsession with multiculturalism and not calling.
all people are created equal.
Why did he
Not
say
all
that?
cultures
Did he
are.
say that to cover his tail if something does happen in his city?
Yeah, of course. I mean, why else would he? He's a politician first. Of course, that's what politicians do. They cover their own butts, and they find a way to put lipstick on a really, in this case, dangerous pig. And that's what terrorism is.
Right.
And he doesn't want to take any responsibility for that.
Dan, you've got a connection to Montgomery County down in Maryland, and Rockville High School, we've been talking about it the last couple of days. A week ago today, allegedly 2 men in this country illegally, one 18, one 17, dragged a 14-year-old girl into a bathroom and raped her there. And the details are so horrific, we're not even going to get anywhere close to them on a family television show. But what's interesting is we now know they were both in the country illegally. The state of Maryland is moving to become a sanctuary city to protect people who are in the country illegally from being deported and whatnot. And yet, when asked yesterday about the defense, one of the attorneys for one of these guys said, you know what, we're going to say it's consensual, because it was. What is going on with this particular case?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that area. I ran for Congress there, right in that general vicinity in Rockville. Parts of Rockville were in the district. I lived in Maryland for years. This is an unbelievably disturbing story, because what's happening now is, again, you have people on the far left, not all Democrats, but people on the far left, trying to cover this story up. And what they'll do, Steve, is they'll throw out these statistics. They'll say, well, 98% of people here illegally are law-abiding citizens. Okay, great. But 2 out of 100 aren't. And a 14-year-old girl's life has been changed horrifically forever because, you know what? I'll throw you out one statistic, and the only statistic that matters. 100% of these darn people shouldn't be here. And the fact that 2 of them attacked this woman brutally, this girl in a bathroom, and these parents and this kid are going to have to live with this for the rest of their life, is a national disgrace. And it's time for people on both sides of the aisle to say, enough of this. I get it. Not all illegal immigrants are criminals. We all understand that. But the ones that are impacting lives permanently across the United States, and it's unforgivable.
All right, so Dan, what's your message to your constituents that live in that state that are now considering a sanctuary state, and the message to other people who like the idea of a sanctuary city or state?
Yeah, you want my message? Vote the bums out. Every single one of them. And that is without regard to party. I'm serious here. We are a country of laws. If you don't respect the laws, that flag doesn't mean a darn thing to you. And a whole lot of folks died horrible deaths to defend the values those flags represent. And if that doesn't mean anything to you and you're a politician, then find a new darn job, because this isn't for you.
Well, these illegals aren't the problem, according to one House Democrat in Maryland. Listen to her.
I reject the idea that if you're undocumented or if you're an immigrant or if you are a Muslim, you are therefore a criminal. And so when people make that statement, it's basically saying all immigrants, all undocumented immigrants are criminals. And actually, from the same study, Department of Justice, it showed the numbers that the #1 race among rapists is actually 60% white. And that's not saying that white men are more likely to become rapists. It's just reflective of the population. And so nothing that Montgomery County Public Schools could have done would have prevented this crime from happening.
Dan, last night I was watching Bill O'Reilly's show, and they were talking about that very thing. And you know what he said? He goes, come on, give us a break. We're smarter than that. Give our viewers some credit. We don't believe every single illegal immigrant is going to go out and murder or rape or do something wrong. But we have to be careful, and we have to make sure our borders are safe, and we have to know who we're bringing into this country.
Ainsley, I watched the exact same segment. I mean, does the left have anything left outside of identity politics? Is that legislator, that delegate from Maryland, going to look into the face of the parents of this poor 14-year-old girl and say, hey, don't worry, it was more likely to be a white guy in this case? Who cares? Nobody is saying that. Nobody's saying all Muslims are terrorists, all illegal immigrants are criminals. Nobody's saying that besides the far left. No conservative saying that, no respectable conservative. Nobody's saying that. What we're simply saying is if we had an enforceable border and we could actually prevent people from coming here illegally on a mass scale, this attack would not have happened. It doesn't matter if he was white, green, or blue. But she doesn't want to acknowledge that because the left doesn't have anything other than identity politics. Right. It's their whole brand right now.
Dan Bongino, thanks so much. Appreciate it.